Alright, now that we've got our game to a playable state, let's add a interaction system. Interaction systems are obviously something you see in plenty of horror games, if not all of them. So first thing we want to do is go to Edit, Project Settings, and down to Input. And we want to add another action mapping. And we will just call this Action, and assign it to our E key. Close Gamepad, and click it right there. And we can close that. So what we want to make is what's called a blueprint interface. So let's make a folder called blueprints. And inside that folder, let's make another folder called interfaces. Right click, and under blueprints here, we want to click blueprint interface, and we will call it BPI for blueprint interface interaction. So let's go ahead and open that up, and we want to give it a function. We'll call this function interact. And that is everything we need to do in the BPI interaction. So we can close it. I'm going to go ahead and close our player controller as well, and our game mode, since we won't be needing to use those for a while. Excuse me. So in our player character, we want to make a function for a line trace. So we're going to call this line trace, and we want it to have one input, and this will be the length of our line trace. So essentially what we're going to do with this line trace is, and make it a float, by the way. And what we're going to do with this line trace is we're basically casting out a line from the center of our camera out into our world, directly forward. And with this length input, we will choose how long that line is. And if it, for example, if it hits something with our BPI interaction, our interface, then we can tell it to do something to interact with it. But we're creating a function for the line trace itself, so we can reuse the same line trace without having to repeat the code over and over again. So, drag off here, we're going to search line trace by channel. So we have a start and an end, our 2 points of our lines. For the start, we want to grab our camera, pull it into right here, and get world location. So we want to get the world location of our camera, and that's our start. For the end, we want to get the camera's forward vector, and we want to multiply that by a float. This number will be the length of our line, so we can just plug in our input right into there. Then we have to add these two together so it's positioned correctly. Not a vector plus float, but it'll be a vector plus vector. Plug it in right there. And that will be our end location. Now we want to break the out hit. And here we can access a bunch of different information about what we hit. We want to create an output as well for our function. And we will call this hit actor. And this will be of type actor, object reference. And we can just plug in hit actor right here into hit actor right there. Compile and save. Now back in our event graph, we can create a input action. So this is the input we just created. It's bound to our E key. So every time we press E, this will fire. So every time we press E, we want our line trace to be called. I'm going to make the length of the line trace 350. I feel like that's a good length, a good reach for our character. And basically, we want to call this function interact if we hit an object that has our BPI interaction attached to it. So what we could do is just drag off hit actor and type in interact. And you can see under this class BPI interaction, we can call the interact message. So whatever actor we hit, it'll call this interact message. But we don't want this message to call every time we hit an actor. We only want it to call when we hit an actor that has this interface bound to it, and we want to make sure we did hit an actor at all. So we can just create a branch before this, and we want to get if the actor is valid. And we also want to check, create an and boolean, if the hit actor is implementing, or is it just does implement interface, not is. And the interface we want to choose is our BPI interaction. And we can plug this right into our condition. So if both those things are true, it'll call this interaction or interact message. So compile and save. So let's create an object that we can interact with to test this out. So if we go back into our blueprints folder, I'm going to create another folder called actors. And I would just create a blueprint class of type actor, and I'll call it BP interaction actor. So open that up. And the first thing is we have to assign our BPI interaction to this. So here in class settings, right over here, we have interfaces, implemented interfaces. And right now it says no interfaces because it doesn't have any by default. We can just click this little add button, search for BPI interaction, and select it. Now it is bound to this actor. So you can also see over here on the left side under interfaces, we now have this interact function that has just become available after we added it. So if we right click on it and we click implement function, this right here is going to be called, this is the event that's being called from this message. So if we hit this specific actor, it checks if it implements the interface, which it does. It checks if it's valid, which it is, and it'll call interact. So interact right here will be fired. We can test this by creating a print string, and we can just type in something like, we hit our interaction actor. Compile and save. Let's also make sure we actually have something to hit. This little sphere here is not physical. We will not see it in the game. So let's go ahead and add a cube, just so we have something to actually interact with. And we can go and drag this out into our world. Let's bring it up a bit. And let's hit play. So when we hit E, nothing happens because we are not actually hitting an actor. Now if we hit this actor right here, it now says we hit our interaction actor. To make this a bit more clear, if we go back into the L1 character, and if we go into line trace right here, we have this draw debug type. We can change it from none to for duration, and this will actually show us the lines coming out of our camera into the world. So if we hit E, and kind of move away so we can see it, there's this very thin red line that will be there for a few seconds, and now it's gone. You can see the length of it too. It's 350 units, because that's what I set our length to be. And we can interact with things like the ground, but that doesn't do anything because we have not set our interaction interface to it. But if we hit our cube, once again, we now see we can hit our interaction actor. So to make this a bit easier as we use this line trace function many times in the future, let's make the debug type also an input. So we can just drag this off here and just release it onto our line trace execution node there. And we now have our draw debug type. So we compile and save, and back in the event graph. Now every time we call the line trace, we can, for debugging, choose what kind of debugging we want. We can change this back to none as we don't need it anymore. Now, in the future, we can actually make our interaction actors children of this specific interaction actor, so that we can put kind of global code in our interaction actor, and it'll all be carried down into its children. For example, in the begin play, we want to cast to our L1 character. This is going to come up in the future, so you don't have to worry about it right now, but let's go ahead and do it so we can cast to L1 character. For the object, we have to get our player character. And then as our L1 character, we can pull this out, click right here, promote to variable, and we will call it player ref for player reference. And we can compile and save. In the future, some of our interaction actors will need a player reference. So it's much better if we make one here in this parent actor so that we don't have to recast to the character for every single interaction actor that we need it for in the future. This will become more clear as we actually get to that part in our series. But for now, that's all we need to do. So great, now we have our interaction system. Any actor that we assign our BPI interaction to, we can call this event interact from, and we can tell it to do whatever we want.